Okay, so let's call the select board meeting to order for Thursday, March 23rd at 7 p.m. Let's just go through a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to ask everybody to make sure they're muted. I am then going to turn this over to Sally for a little bit so she can give a brief overview of why we're here, how we got here. And then we're going to turn it over to Peter Carruthers, who is part of Acorn, and he is going to give an overview of the project. And then we will have time to ask questions. And after Peter is done, what I'll do is I will try, if you can raise your hand somehow or send me a chat. Now there's a lot of people on here, so I'll try and keep up. We'll ask whoever I call on, we'll just ask you to identify yourself so that Tasha can get your name down and who's speaking. Okay, Sally, are you here?
I'm not seeing Sally yet.
I thought I saw her when we first got in. When I first got in.
Is there anybody else from the Energy Committee who can provide that introduction? Oh, Ian raised his hand.
Hey, John Elder, can you mute yourself?
You hear me, Troy?
Thank you. Okay, Ian, if you want to, go ahead, and if Sally comes on, she can jump in.
Well, I was gonna say Richard Butts is here from the Energy Committee.
Okay.
If he wants to take lead.
Rich,
Okay.
do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I think I can
Okay.
do it at least until Sally comes, and then she can take over. This is a project that the Energy Committee has been looking at really for a couple of years, thinking about how we can meet some of the state's energy goals and provide something for Bristol residents that is going to really help them now and in the future, and particularly in regard to energy use. And so we've learned that one of the prime uses for a capped landfill, particularly one like the one we have that has a really good solar orientation and it has very little visibility from the town or the neighborhoods, is a premier location for a solar field. And so we started looking. We had some contact with Evergreen, which is a company that does a lot of solar installations in Vermont. But I think one of the things that turned us toward Acorn was the fact that this is a outfit that has been working in Addison County, has had 2 successful projects, one in Middlebury and one in Shoreham, and has had a lot of community involvement and is in fact owned by the community in which it's located and other investors, all within the state of Vermont. So that we have an opportunity with Acorn, rather than doing business with a for-profit organization that might sell some of the energy credits out of the state, we have an opportunity with Acorn to have Bristol residents be owners, be part of the co-op, be part of the decision-making, and also because it is a not-for-profit with volunteer organizers and managers and a volunteer board, it means that in the end, the panels are going to be less expensive, and that we see as a big advantage. There's some other things that I think really appeal to us, and that's the fact that many people in Bristol do not have solar suitable sites either on their houses or in their property. And so this project will enable people to buy in. Essentially, they buy a share. A share is a panel, and they will own that panel. They'll be able to transfer ownership of the panel if they want, and they will have the advantage of stable electricity prices for now, and probably a very good economic advantage as we move forward when electricity prices are more than likely going to be going up. But even if that's not the case, we're going to be I'm frankly planning to buy into it if it happens. Even though I have solar panels on my house, I don't have enough, and I'm paying pretty good electric rates for the electricity I'm using now for my heat pumps and heat pump, hot water heater, and so on. And I'm looking forward to two things. One is on the long term, having an investment that's going to keep paying back over the life of the project, which is at least 25 years. And that I'm going to be lowering the carbon footprint, which is very important to me. So I think if you look at this project in terms of a good use for the capped landfill, the Energy Committee felt that this was not only a good project for the landfill, but also a good one moving forward. Ian was involved in this to some degree in the beginning. I don't know, Ian, if you have more that you'd like to add, or if Sally's has come back.
No, not much. You were very thorough. Yeah, when I was a member of the Energy Committee over the past couple of years, we had spoken with people who thought that the use of that land, it's sort of a prime area for solar. It's already a preferred site in the state's eyes, which is good. And we'd had Green Lantern Energy, another company, had come to us with a proposal for it, and that's what sort of started the ball rolling on this. Ultimately, they decided to step away. I stepped away from the Energy Committee with my select board duties, and then that committee sort of continued discussions and invited Acorn to the table, and that's where we are now.
Okay, thank you. Peter, are you there? Would you like to start?
I'll start by saying, thank you, Michelle, but Rich Carpenter, who is on the call, is the one that's going to do this.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, Rich.
I saw him here. Oh,
He's still muted, I think.
Yeah, he is muted.
Rich, will you unmute yourself?
Uh-oh. Rich, you're muted.
Sorry, folks.
There we go.
I was sharing my screen and I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself.
Volume up.
Try again. Yeah, I tried lower left, but that didn't do it for some reason. So, okay. So we thought we'd put together a relatively short presentation just for the folks who haven't seen the longer version that we did for the select board a couple weeks ago. And there are several of us from Acorn Energy Co-op on the call, and also two people, Nils Bain and Eric Plana from Aegis Renewable Energy. So we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. We thought it'd be useful to just say a little bit about Acorn. Actually, Richard has said much of this. We spun off from the Addison County Relocalization Network back in 2008. Our whole focus has been on promoting renewable energy and energy efficiency and help people make that kind of transition in their energy uses. As Richard mentioned, we did a project 9 years ago, hard to believe, in Middlebury behind the police station, which happily has outperformed our expectations over the 9 years that it's been in operation. And we just went live about a month ago in Shoreham with a 150 kilowatt project, which was built using the very same financing model that we're planning to use in the AES3 or the Bristol project. Our co-op has 80 members. As Richard said, an all-volunteer board. We have one part-time paid coordinator. Sort of a 20,000-foot level of Acorn Energy Solar 3. It's 500 kilowatts, which makes it over 3 times the size of the project in, whoops, sorry, don't touch your pad when you're showing slides. It makes it over 3 times the size of the array in Shoreham. It'll be 847,000 kilowatts DC, and that comes from having over 1,800 individual panels, each of which is 400 watts. We'll use a little more than 3 acres of land out of the 12 acres that are part of the Bristol landfill. And as you all know, that's owned by the town of Bristol. In many ways, this is an ideal site, and it's been kind of singled out, or landfills in general, by the Public Utilities Commission. And they give favorable treatment just in terms of the solar adder that accrues to projects that are built on landfill sites. Our partner that's been mentioned is Aegis Renewable Energy. And just to give you a sense of the scale of this, it's about a $1.75 million investment. This is the sort of bird's eye view. South is down, the baseball field at the high school there. I imagine you're all fairly familiar with this, so you're probably more familiar with it than I am, so I'm not going to spend much time. But we would use about 3.5 acres of land that total lease. The actual array would take about 2.25 acres. So the financial structure, this is part of the project that is unique, takes advantage of something called the the Vermont crowdfunding rules or regulations that were put forth about 5 years ago. And it enables us as a small company and setting up a small company to essentially do a public offering within the state of Vermont with certain regulations that are imposed on such offerings, but the project in Shoreham was reviewed by the Department of Financial Regulation and approved. And one of the neat things about this is there are 2 categories of investors. Series A investors have to be accredited according to the SEC rules, and they're folks or companies that can take advantage of the tax credits. And then the Series B investors must be residents of Vermont, and the other stipulation is they have to have a meter that's connected to the Green Mountain Power. And so the setup is fairly simple. There are 1,862 units that will be sold, and each unit corresponds to one of the panels in the array. And once it's up and running, each person who's invested in the array will get a credit on their bill that corresponds to their pro rata share of the total electricity generated by the array. So in January, that's going to be relatively small, and July and August, it's relatively large. One of the attributes of this is after 6 years, when the Series A investors have realized all of their tax credits, they have an option to do what is generally called a flip, meaning they can sell the remaining portion of their ownership to the Series B members. And at that stage, Series B will have 100% voting control and can essentially run the LLC in whatever way they choose. Up until that time, the energy co-op will be the manager and is willing to continue to be the manager after that point if chosen by the members of the LLC. One of the specific provisions that we've included is we'd be delighted to have 60% of the units go to residents of Bristol. And we divided up the Shoreham project a little bit differently, but we felt that to make this truly community solar, we would make that available. There's no commitment on the part of Bristol to that the residents would buy that much, but we want to make that available. And as to Acorn's role, we're involved in everything from the project design, working with Aegis, setting up the legal and the financial structure and a limited liability corporation, raising the funds from the Series A folks and the Series B folks, getting all of the necessary letters of support, certificates, permits, overseeing all of the activities, and then during the first 6 years, administering the project, which includes accounting and taxes and reporting to members, arranging insurance, and anything else that's needed. So this slide tries to pull together all of the different benefits that we see, both for Series B members and also for the town. One is that I mentioned before, the Series B members will actually own this. And by definition, they will all be Vermont residents who are tied to the Green Mountain Power grid. And our hope is that at least 60% of them will be Bristol residents. And frankly, if there was sufficient demand in Bristol that we knew about up front, why we'd certainly consider making that even more for Bristol residents. We think it's local in every sense of the word: the design, the construction, the power, ownership, management will all be done locally. It's helpful, and Richard pointed this out too, for folks who may have wanted to put solar on their homes or in their yards and just don't have either the appropriate south-facing clear window to take maximum use of the sun, or they're not in a position to take advantage of the tax credits. Another feature is that all of the renewable energy credits, as part of our arrangement and having our certificate of public good, will go to Green Mountain Power, and with a stipulation that they are used by Green Mountain Power to help do their part in achieving the 90% renewable energy by 2050 goal. Federal and Vermont's tax credits will again benefit local investors, and here local may be broader than Bristol, but we'd love to have folks in Bristol that are part of the state as well. As mentioned before, it's a great use for a so-called brownfield site, and the Public Utilities Commission makes that clear in the way they've set up the various incentives. And not least at all is that the project will generate annual income starting at $11,000 a year and growing over time as the tax component of that grows. That we estimate it'll generate about $330,000 in revenue for the town over the next 25 years. So I've mentioned we think the business model is relatively unique in that it lets one group of people who can take advantage of the tax credits and another group, Series B, have an attractive deal where they're really taking advantage of using the electricity in their homes or businesses. So bottom line is we think it's a truly collaborative approach to solar electricity generation. So with that, I'll turn it back to Michelle, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And I think we're more than happy to answer any questions, and there are several of us who will jump up or raise our hands when we hear a question.
Okay, thanks, Rich. I think what we'd like to do is, rather than everybody raise their hands, if you guys want to send a chat to Ian and myself, or even to everybody in between Ian and I, will ask the questions, and then somebody can answer them rather than me trying to keep track of everybody on the screen, since there's so many of us. One question that we already have is, what effort is being made to solicit Bristol investors outside of town hall presentations? Will Acorn be heading up this outreach?
I can answer that one. As part of our memorandum of understanding with the town, we're asking to have access to, or I think we have, anyone can have access, but to the various lists, both of voters and property owners in Bristol. And we would reach out initially by US mail, telling people about the project, asking them to give us their email addresses, because most of our further communications will be electronic. We would have a number of, I was going to say gatherings, but they may be virtual gatherings, to both present the details of the offering and to answer any questions that folks have. One thing I just say up front is that we're not really in a position to talk about the financial return. Part of this is, if you think of public offerings at a federal level, the SEC vets the documents before companies can make them public. And then the same thing happens in the state with the Department of Financial Regulation. We think that process will go fairly quickly because we've done it once before, and we've talked to the folks at DFR about this project, but that's likely to take a couple months. So until we've gone through that process, excuse me, we can tell, excuse me, we can tell people about the project, but we can't tell them what the price is and what the return is going to be.
Okay. Somebody just asked me about, to remind everyone what the process is, immediate next steps necessary, such as at least the MOU. So at this point, we are working with Acorn in a memorandum of understanding to move forward with the project. We will eventually enter into a lease agreement if this is going to move forward, and we'll be evaluating that as well. So that's, at this point, we need to get the MOU first so that Acorn can move forward with the PUC and getting their permits going. So those are the next couple steps. Correct, Rich?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have another question. If any issues or problems in the future arise from the landfill decomposing waste or leachate, will that have any impact on the owners of this project, or will the town retain all responsibility for the landfill and any ramifications on that?
I'm going to ask if Ben is here, if he could handle that question.
I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes.
Hi. So this is one of the things that will be in the lease that's currently under negotiation. And Bristol residents may want to hear from their own select board members about the town's position on this, but I can explain how I think it should work, and a little bit about my understanding of how this all should work going forward. From the co-op's perspective, the landfill is owned by Bristol, and is the trash that was buried there with the permission of the town. And so from our perspective, since Acorn didn't have any role in putting trash into the landfill and isn't responsible for maintaining the landfill or monitoring the wells, the environmental liabilities associated with the landfill in that function really are Bristol responsibilities, and the placement of the solar array on there should not have any direct effects on Acorn. As some of you probably know, there is a federal law called CERCLA, which deals with how to tag with liability entities that have an interest in real property where there is an environmental release or a hazardous release of materials. And the way that those environmental liability rules are drafted, it's designed to cast as broad a net as possible. It's my belief that the reason that was done was because you might have, let's say, a tannery operating in the 1900s that contaminates some land, and when the problem emerges in the 2000s, no one can find the tannery and make them liable. But in this case, the town is unlikely to go away as an entity. And so it seems unlikely to me that the EPA would turn to the Acorn subsidiary that is simply has placed its panels on top of the landfill and say, hey, whatever the leachate is, you guys are responsible for it. I mean, we would turn to them and make the same argument that we didn't put anything in the landfill and we're really just on the land, not in the land. So I personally view it as a small risk because unlike the 19th century tannery, the town of Bristol is not going anywhere.
Okay, I'm going to expand on that a little bit, and Peter, Val, or Joel, you guys can jump in. This is probably something we'll have a discussion with about in the lease agreement because, you know, although the town will continue to maintain the well monitoring because that's required and maintaining the landfill, so to speak, if for some reason, you know, these are on ballasts, if we get a lot of water and there's gravel or whatever that comes away from the ballast because the ballasts are there, that's something that we'd have to work with Acorn to determine who's responsible for that. Is that about your understanding, Peter, Joel?
Well, that's my understanding.
The way,
Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
the way I understood it, the discussion we had was that anything that was caused by the array, any effect that the array had on the landfill cap would be, we were looking for that to be the responsibility of Acorn, and anything that happened that happened naturally outside of the array or inside, if it was something that wasn't caused by the array, that would be the town's issue.
Right. Okay.
If I
Anything else
can
to
just
add to that, Val?
Well, just that the arrays will change the stormwater runoff patterns because of the flat surfaces and that it won't be just a natural sheet flow over the landfill like we see now. So there will be a change, and we will need to talk about how that impact will be managed and who's responsible.
Okay. All right.
this has been Mark
also
said.
how the design can accommodate that. How the design is going to anticipate that and accommodate that.
Okay. All right. Ben, did you want to say something else?
I just want to say that I think to the extent that we're talking about causation, that's what Peter was discussing. I think we're in agreement, and obviously that'll be borne out through our discussions on the lease. But from a conceptual framework, the idea of causation works for us, and we're pretty confident that we can show that whatever changes there are due to rainfall or anything else, it's not going to have an effect on the overall ecology of your or the system's function of your landfill. But those are conversations, to be fair, we haven't had a chance to sit down and have yet.
Right.
So we look forward to that, and I'm confident we can resolve those issues.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. At the end of the day, when all the costs are factored in for someone who buys into this array, will there be a net savings to me on my electric bill at the end of each year? Go ahead, Rich.
I can take an answer at that. Yes, the whole idea is that the credits from the array will accrue to the electric bill. We advise people and we give them some guidance depending on what their current utilization in kilowatt hours is as to how many panels would be the right amount. You don't want to buy more panels, in other words, generate more kilowatt hours than you're using, or at least generate more dollars than you're using, because Green Mountain Power lets those, if you have more credits than you're using in a given month, you can carry them forward for 12 months, but after that you lose them. So we try to guide people to have just enough, but not too many. So there, you would experience a net savings over the course of a year.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Next question. Regarding the Middlebury solar array, what percentage of the Series A investors sold their shares back to the Series B?
I can answer that as well. We didn't use this model. It wasn't frankly available 10 years ago for Middlebury. So we had a more traditional equity investor, which was Co-op Insurance. And then we borrowed money from National Bank of Middlebury and the Vermont Economic Development Authority. So we don't have that experience. In Shoreham, in Acorn Energy Solar 2, Co-op Insurance, again, is in this case, a Series A investor, and we'll have to wait for 6 years. But quite frankly, there is no incentive for the Series A investor to stick around once they've achieved all of the tax credits. And there's an incentive to leave because they can sell their remaining ownership to the Series B investors. So the IRS doesn't like it if we pre-structure this and say they definitely will sell. So we give them an option to sell. But looking at the numbers and looking at the situation, I cannot see any reason why they wouldn't sell. There's no economic benefit to them to continue to. Now, when I say them, I mean the Series A. I doubt that Co-op Insurance will be a Series A investor in this project, but whoever the Series A investors are, they're frankly used to taking their tax credits, depreciation credits, and then cleanly exiting the investment after 6 years.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is the MOU a select board decision following this evening's meeting? And I can answer that it will be on Monday night's agenda. Is that correct, Val? Yes, it'll be on Monday night's agenda to discuss. Can you explain the signing of the MOU is only the beginning and there's still a lot of engineering and planning that will happen to make sure the project is appropriate?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Nils Bain to comment on that. Nils is the CEO of Aegis Renewable Energy, which has done many, many solar projects. Nils?
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, so there is a lot of work still to be done. And the MOU is really the first step to allow us to begin the process of getting the professional engineers involved in the very detailed engineering work necessary to design an appropriate system for the landfill. As part of the Certificate of Public Good petition, that is effectively the permit for the project, permit application for the project, it requires a very significant amount of expert testimony, expert design to make sure that the system that's going on the landfill is appropriate to the application.
Okay. Next question. Do the racks built to hold the solar panels penetrate the landfill cap?
They do not. No. This is all ballasted. Even the fencing will not penetrate through the cap. So everything, including the conduit for the electrical, will be on the surface, and will be on the conduit will be on sleepers, which are concrete blocks, and secured to those blocks. And the racking for the array will be what's called a pour-in-place ballasted system. So effectively, we build a form that the racking vertical members get embedded into, and then we bring concrete trucks in and we pump the concrete into those ballast forms. And those, once they're cured, serve as physical weight to make sure that the wind can't blow over the solar array or move it in any way.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Has Acorn or the town of Bristol done an environmental assessment to better understand the risk of installing on top of a brownfield?
I'm going to again ask Nils if he can comment on that based on experience.
Sure. Again, that's part of the process of pulling together our petition for the permit for the project with the Public Utility Commission. So we will be bringing, again, experts in to do those assessments.
Okay. Is the select board unanimous yes on this project? If not, could the noes express their concern? I think we're unanimous on this project. I don't know. Joel, unmute your, say something, Joel.
Okay, my concern is still, as it always has been, the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And $11,000 kind of figure that's been batted around per year over 25 years is going to be somewhere around $330,000. I guess I'd ask Acorn. First of all, the first proposal was $8,500 a year rent. We talked about a 2% inflation rate every 5 years. And then they asked for no taxes. My question, the Shoreham to Rich, the Shoreham site you just did, what are you paying for rent there a year? That's my question one. And the investors of solar of the Series A, the big companies, do they have to be Vermont companies? That's a question I have.
Okay.
And then I'll ask my last two about the investment is, you asked us not to exceed 11 grand a year, but I'm wondering if you're going to ask the guy to mow the inside the solar thing for, I'm going to pick a number of $500 the first year. Are you expecting him to mow it for $500 on the year 25? I mean, you don't want to give us any increase over 25 years and, only maybe at 100, if everybody bought one panel in Bristol, that's 1,800 households. And I just think we have to look out for the entire town, what their investment is. I prefer the site. I think it's a great site. I'm going to be the closest one on this group that I can see here tonight. I'll see all the panels and the wires go by my house. I live right on the end of the Pine Street and Liberty Street. I just think I'm still concerned about the set amount. That's my thing, Michelle.
Okay, Rich?
I'm going to try to remember all of these. You asked about the rate. We had originally proposed $8,500 a year, and that the town waived taxes. The feedback that we got was that that wasn't going to happen. So what we proposed was a total of $11,000 a year, where the rent part would be fixed, but that the tax would increase as your tax rate increases. And we just sent a clarification of that to Valerie today, indicating that that amount would go up each year based on the extent to which the taxes on the property went up each year. So it would start at 11,000, but it would grow to, depending on what estimates one makes about inflation, would grow to probably $13,000 or $14,000 a year by the end of year 25. So that's question one. question 2, what we were paying in Shoreham, we pay $2,500 a year. And that's frankly where we got the 8,500 for in the first place, because there's roughly 3 times as much land in your array. Excuse me. And I've lost track of question 3. I'm sorry.
Are the Series A going to be sold to people out of
Oh,
state?
Thank you. Our strong preference would be that Series A are sold to people in the state of Vermont for all of the same reasons that you probably would prefer that. We can't commit to that because until we try selling them, we won't know. But that certainly initially that will be it will be exclusively for people who are residents of Vermont. The Series A do not need to be offered under the guidance of the crowdfunding or the DFR's regulations, because they're limited to accredited investors who theoretically have sufficient experience and investments of this sort that they don't need the same kind of protections that are necessary in opening up investments to anyone who's a resident. So our strong preference, and the folks that we're focusing on initially, are all residents of Vermont. I just don't think that we can make a commitment right now that that won't change.
Michelle, I have another answer for the mowing.
Go ahead, Peter.
The mowing inside the fence will be done by us, by the project. The mowing outside the fence, which is being done by Bristol, will continue to be so.
Peter, I was just making a point there that whether it was a mowing or electrician that has to go down and work on the property, or one maintenance person or contractor will use, you're asking us for a 25-year commitment set amount for the rent. Are you going to ask them who are going to work on your site a 25-year set amount? I doubt it. And that's just where I was coming with that.
Oh.
Anywhere you go, anything you rent, anything, I wish I could pay the same taxes I did when I bought this place 33 years ago as I am now. And I'm in charge of part of that with the 5 of us putting budgets together to keep taxes low. And that's why I say that to get a freeze on this is like getting a freeze on your taxes almost. To get it lowered from 85 down to $3,000 rent. I have some real trouble with that. I love the site. I want to support this. And my backup question to that was to Rich about buying more panels when you've already got panels on your house. What if you get more than 60% people in Bristol that want to buy? Will they look at that like a Richard Butts and say, not to pick on Richard, but say, you've already got panels, you're already saving with your panels at your house, you want to buy more so you can zero out your bill, but we've got more people that want to buy in than we've got panels available. Will that be some kind of a give and take? We'll say people with no panels whatsoever in Bristol, we're going to be given first priority versus people who in Bristol have panels already. Has that been discussed?
That hasn't been discussed per se. I can say a little bit about how it worked in Shoreham, and that is that we made everyone aware of the opportunity. We couldn't take anyone's money until we were approved by the Department of Financial Regulation, and we asked for a $50 per unit deposit, a non-refundable deposit. And it turned out that it was probably 4 or 5 months after that we required the full payment. We did it strictly on a first come, first served basis. And I'm not sure, frankly, with since it is a public offering, if we can discriminate by whether people already have panels on their roof or not. If that's something that the select board really wanted to do, we'd look into it and see whether we could limit it in that way. We haven't limited it in that way in the past. We do limit at least we did in Shoreham, and I think we would do the same thing. No one can buy more than X% of the total number of panels in the first go around, in the first roughly month and a half to 2 months that the offering is live. And then if we aren't fully subscribed by then, we would open it up to let people buy, or companies or whoever buy more. And in the case in Shoreham, there were 2 entities, the town itself and a church, that wound up buying more panels because they were still available.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just to give some clarification for people who don't know this here, the way the panels work, the state comes with an assessor who creates an assessment of the array, and that assessment is only taxed on the municipal portion. They do not pay school taxes, and that assessment stays in place for the whole 25 years. It does not change. So just so people are aware that that's, once it's set, it's set. It does not go up. If we do a town reappraisal, that does not get reassessed. Okay, next question. Where would matters stand after 25 years?
If I could explain my question there too, and I think Mari's bringing some other interesting stuff in. But
Sure, go ahead, John.
I was just thinking, financially, my understanding is that on a lot of these renewable energy projects, solar and wind, one option is to have them removed at the end of the term. At the end of 25 years, they can just be removed from the site. So that Bristol's commitment has that limitation. Or similarly, someone could renegotiate a new set of panels, but that's related to the lifespan of a lot of things like this, as I've learned. But anyway, that's my understanding. If it's true, I think it's an interesting fact that this is a commitment within a particular time span for the city, which could be renewed or not for the town, as people then preferred. Is that
Rich,
right?
this is Ben. I think I can take a crack at this one if that's all right.
Go ahead, Ben.
So there are 2 or 3 different levels, John, that you have to consider here. And I think I can help explain why 25 years has sort of become a standard. There are 2 reasons for the 25-year period. One is that it is the warranty period or the extended warranty period for the equipment that we're running.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one way to manage risk for the people who are installing and running these things, is to be able to go back to the manufacturers and look at that. I mean, if there's a problem with one of these expensive components. The second piece is that under Vermont tax law, leases of longer than 25 years, I mean a little bit longer, not much, are actually treated as a sale. And so if you enter into, say, a 50-year lease for something like this, you wind up having to pay land gains tax on the lease, even though you don't ever intend to own it. So the tax department sees a very, very long-term lease as really a change in ownership or a way around the tax rules. And so we'd prefer to not have that fight. The third thing is that all solar projects that are permitted by the Public Utilities Commission contain as a condition to their license for operating that at the end of the useful life of the project be decommissioned and the area returned to its original state as nearly as practicable. Not maybe every blade of grass, but the general contour of things. When year 24 or 25 arrives, it's our expectation that the project will still be churning out about 80% of its nameplate rating in terms of the efficiency of the panels that are there, which do degrade a little bit every year. And it will be up to the Series B members as a group at that time whether they want to decommission the project and move on to something else, whether they want to approach the town of Bristol and renegotiate a lease for a longer period of time, or whether they want to replace the aging panels with some newer technology that may have come along in the interim. And I think that nobody at Acorn at least is comfortable saying that we can be confident of a technical or other prediction about where we're going to be in 25 years. So it's really the license will still be good from the PUC to run the thing, but the relationship between the project and the town may have changed, or the relationship of the people who own the panels and their tolerance for risk may have changed. And so it's a chance for everybody to take a deep breath and decide where they want to go from there. And I apologize for the length of my answer.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick comment on the decommissioning, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Nas.
So one thing to keep in mind is that everything that is installed on the cap of the landfill will actually be on the surface. So typically a ground-mounted solar array that's not on a landfill has a lot of underground components, and the foundations are actually in the ground, and the conduit is underground, and so on. In this case, everything will be on the surface. So it's a lot easier to decommission actually than a typical ground-mounted solar array, where you end up having to torch cut off the posts below grade and then backfill it over. So it's a fairly straightforward proposition.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, if I might.
Go ahead, Rich.
Just while we're talking about the lease, built into the lease that we've proposed is a 5-year extension period that is kind of written in, that has to be mutually agreed by the Series B investors at that time and the town. So no one can force it to happen, but it can happen fairly straightforwardly if at the end of 24 years, say, everybody's still happy with the arrangement and it's going forward well. So I just point that out as a feature.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to, Tom Dunn here, I'd like to add that in the model, the financial model, we have allowed funds to decommission it. So it won't require, whatever costs there are will be covered in the model. Funds will be available to take it down if we have to.
Okay. Representative Cordes asks if it would be helpful or useful to have a public presentation from an environmental engineer. I don't know if anybody want to pipe in on that, but.
I don't have a good answer. Do you, Nils?
I think that would actually, it would really have to come as a request from concerned town members, really. I'm sure we could arrange for something like that. There will be engineers and scientists who will be going on site to do their assessments, and we could potentially coordinate something while they're there. Maybe a 25-minute or 20-minute just talk while they happen to be there to provide a Q&A or something like that. I think that could be arranged.
Okay.
Nils, sorry to keep interrupting. This is Ben Marks again.
Mm-hmm.
I should also mention that the Public Utility Commission process is a public process. So every report that is generated designed to show that the project is safe and is not going to have any malign effects on the environment will be available to anybody who wants to log into the PUC website and download it. There will be a lot of information related to this project, and there's no reason why the town can't link to the proceeding on its webpage to make this information available to everybody. We can provide hard copies of what we file to the town so that it can be available for inspection in the town office if we ever get to the point where we are face to face again. But I just wanted to emphasize that we're committed to being transparent about everything that we find out, and hope that there is a level of interest in what we're doing. So.
Okay, thanks. Josh, I think, Josh Crandall, I think your question was answered, but let me know if not. When the solar cells lose their effectiveness in 25 to 30 years, who bears the cost to replace? Did you get your answer from Mr. Dunn? Okay. Mike, can you clarify the role of the Series A's investors? Apart from tax credits, where, when do they expect a return on investment? Likewise, when they sell their shares to Series B investors, 1, what determines the share price? 2, where does the capital to repurchase the shares come from? And 3, what is the incentive for Series B investors to buy these shares?
I can take a stab at that. The way the corporation is set up is that the Series A investors own 99% of the company during the first five and a half years, and the Series B own, or I should say control, 1%. The Series A therefore get 99% of the tax credits, which includes investment tax credit, Vermont tax credit, depreciation credits. That's the only return that they get. They do not get cash returns. They get it in the form of credits on their taxes. After 5.5 years, this so-called flip causes the ownership to change. And at that point, the Series B investors own 95% and the Series A own 5%. And so it's that 5% that the Series A have the option of selling. And the way it's been written into our operating agreements in the past, they sell it at fair market value as determined by an independent third party. So whatever the total array is valued at 6 years from now, the selling price will be 5% of that. And you asked the question of how that would be paid for. In our financial models, we save cash behind each year during the first 6 years so that we will have adequate funds. When I say we, I really mean the LLC, which is separate and distinct from the Acorn Energy Co-op. So the LLC will have adequate funds, assuming that the Series A investor will choose to sell their shares. Frankly, if they didn't choose to sell their shares, they only control 5% of the vote. So they have very, very little power, if you will, within the company, and they have no financial return. So from my perspective, it's hard to imagine why they wouldn't choose to sell their shares. And we've done the financial planning that way. If they didn't, if they said, oh, we're just going to walk away from this, that's actually to the benefit of the Series B shareholders because they're not paying that 5% of the fair market value to enable the A's to exit the LLC. So we think they have every incentive to leave, no incentive to stay, but they can stay if they want to, in which case it's better for the Series B.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Okay, Josh asked, who is paying for the environmental assessment and where is the substation proposed to be located?
Nils?
Sure. Okay, so the environmental assessment is done as part of the preparation for the certificate of public good petition, which is the permit. So that will be borne, that cost will be borne by Acorn. And then where is the substation proposed to be located? It's actually a transformer. The substation already exists. So we'll be tying into one of Green Mountain Power's circuits that is fed from the existing substation. That transformer will be down at the bottom of the access road that comes from just past the Department of Public Works building, and it goes down into the landfill. So the transformer that is the point of interconnection for the project is just off of the cap at the bottom of that access road.
Okay, thank you. John Moyers, taxpayers need a break, and if there are net savings every year for buying into this system, then I'd like to suggest the town of Bristol, the school district, get first dibs on all this cheaper power. Well, John, the school already has a contract, Peeker, correct me if I'm wrong, with somebody else, correct? Peeker's shaking his head yes. And the town of Bristol entered into a contract with Green Lantern to get solar from their array off of 116. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that the town of Bristol can't use this, but at this point, the majority of our electricity, or the major players of our electricity, are going to come from the Green Lantern array. Josh.
Right. And
Go
sorry,
ahead,
and in addition to that, in terms of getting the electricity, the town would have to purchase panels as part of the co-op in order to get that. So that's something that we would have to, if it's something that we wanted to look at, it would be, we would need to find funds to be able to purchase panels to be situated in the array in order to take the output of those.
Okay, thank you.
This is Ben Marks. Just to add on to that, it is possible that down the line, people will be moving out of town, and who are investors in the project, who are leaving the state, for instance. If you're retiring to Florida, and so we do expect that from time to time there will be panels. I mean, panels. They're really shares of interest in the LLC that will come up for transfer within the company, so that people who are want to buy additional interest amounts may be able to do that if they can reach an agreement on price with the seller. And if the town, for instance, builds a new building and has a new meter and has additional appetite for electric energy, they may be able to purchase into the project at a future date, just not at the same not with the same flexibility that you would at the ground floor, I guess I would say, because at the ground floor you can say, here's my energy need, I want to cover it. Whereas once the shares are all sold, as they come up for sale, you may need it or you may not.
Okay, thank you. Josh, will the buying of shares be small enough that all Bristol residents can invest?
I can take a stab at that. If I look at what we sold in Shoreham, there were 612 panels and we had 48 investors. So on average, each had about 12, little close to 13 units or panels. If I take that same number and apply it to the 1,862 panels, we come up with 146 investors. One of the requirements that we have is that each investor purchase a minimum of 5 panels. And we think for almost any residence, that one is going to need somewhere between 5 and 15 panels. So the short answer is, I don't know exactly how many residents there are in Bristol, but it won't be possible for everyone to participate.
Okay. Let's see. Got down too far. Okay, John asks, what kind of insurance is required? What does it cover, and what is the estimated cost? And is there a rough estimate of all the expenses borne by the co-op?
I can answer most of that. There's both property casualty and liability insurance. We don't have specific quotes on that. We've extrapolated from our experience on the past project. As to the overall costs, we have a very detailed model. And by the way, the model, when I say model, it's a large spreadsheet with all kinds of assumptions in it and running out the financial characteristics of the project. That is one of the many things that the Department of Financial Regulation actually reviews and approves. Once that's been done, in Shoreham, we made the model available to anyone that wanted to look at it. We only had a couple people that chose to, but that's part of the sort of transparency of the offering, if you will.
Okay. Next question, Katie. Will this project eliminate other activities from happening on this site, such as trails, other open spaces, and activities? Well, I can tell you that the Bristol Trail Network will be on the outside of this. As into open spaces, you know, they're using 3 acres, so the rest of the landfill site is open for that. Val, you got anything to add to that?
Well, I was going to ask a question along that same line. I know that Katie's on board, or at least on the screen here, and maybe some others who can answer this, how this project fits into the Bristol Town Plan and the regional plan, because I know folks have expressed concerns about potential conflicts, and how does this is this use compatible with the visions outlined already in the town and regional plan?
You're not unmuted yet, Katie. There you go.
I actually left a comment for Michelle to address that further. As she scrolls down, she'll see, yes, this project does align with the Addison County Regional Plan. And just as this has come up, we've been talking about it, and there's a lot of interest there and a lot of support. It also, you know, but I have to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Planning Commission because we did not discuss this prior to this meeting. But my point of view as a staff at Addison County Regional Planning, and just have, you know, my feeling is, yes, it is supported by the town plan, and I know it's supported by the energy plan. But the reason I posed this question was I had heard people concerned about other activities that might want to happen on the space, but my feeling is other things could happen on this property. It just is a matter of planning for them. And so I was really just trying to get that conversation happening. But as my feeling is, both the region and the town plans are very supportive of this project.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say something, Michelle.
Go ahead, Peter.
We toured the landfill with Porter Knight, and she looked at our plan, and she looked at the area that would be good for mountain biking. And she said, this would be terrific mountain biking. And so the Aegis slightly altered the footprint of the array and allowed for quite a nice little mountain biking area. And we also walked the trail and around the landfill, and that's not going to be changed at all.
Okay, thank you. Sue Kavanaugh had to sign off, her and Chris, but she did want to say, she said, sends her support to Bristol MOU for this project. We think this is a positive local development, and we have always supported Acorn, so this is a good partnership. Thanks all. Happy to see your faces. Comment, I think this is yours, Katie. Comment, ACRPC is in support of this project. Okay, so I can skip that one. Mr. Bouvier, can a business based in Bristol purchase Series B shares?
Yes.
Simple answer. Okay. Yeah. Porter, did you have something you wanted to say, or did we cover it?
I think it was essentially covered. I just wanted to say that I, for the Bristol Trail Network, really appreciated that the Energy Committee and Aegis and Acorn specifically reached out and asked to walk the trail with the trail network and to see, you know, what was there, and wanted to make sure that this use would not eliminate other uses. So they're seeking to look for it to be compatible, which I appreciate. And I think that, you know, it's certainly a higher use than just straight up recreation on that site. But particularly the fact that they're making an effort to be compatible with additional uses, it won't, you know, the trail can still be there, and they're open over the next, you know, over the course of development and engineering to looking at, you know, what are the best ways to fence it, et cetera, to make it aesthetically supportive and pleasing. And so, you know, I think from a trail standpoint, we're glad to see the landfill get used in this way.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that briefly? Sure. I just want I just wanted to follow up with Porter saying that there still is time. And my earlier question about signing the MOU is not like the end of the planning phase. There's still ability to, this is my understanding, to discuss things, to tweak things, to make sure that we're not eliminating any other possibilities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Because the MOU is just the starting point. We still have stuff to talk about with regard to the lease agreement for this. Okay. Comment from Josh. He says, sorry, Joel. I would like to voice my support for this project. It is smart, well-structured, and the right thing to do. Good work to the folks who have contributed their time to date. Next question from Matt Sharp. A 5-panel minimum was mentioned. Is there a max buy-in?
Yeah, again, in the Shoreham project, we set a max equal to 10% of the total panels initially. And then we relaxed that because we still had some panels to sell. We frankly haven't decided or come up with a max for this project. I certainly don't think it would be more than 10%. It might be less than 10%. The theory behind that is just to give a lot of people the opportunity to participate. And if someone could take half of the project, that would greatly reduce the 146 potential investors. And we think it's helpful to have a lot of people move forward in being able to take advantage of solar electricity.
Thank you, Rich. Well, that was the last question I had. Does anybody else have any other questions? Or does anybody want to make a comment?
I see, this is Ben Marks. I see another question from John Moyers.
Oh, sorry, John, just came in. If a property that is brought into the array is sold, can the shares panels be sold to the building buyer?
That is a slightly complicated question because at least the initial offering is being made only to Vermont residents, which we have to do to qualify for the Vermont Small Business Offering Exemption. In addition, the net metering arrangement is only available to Green Mountain Power customers because you can't have two utilities administering the net metering for a single project. But I don't recall whether we ever asked the question, in 10 years, if I want to sell my house and my interest to a second home buyer from New York, whether that's available. I mean, the meter will stay here, obviously. And I think we'd have to just commit to doing some research before giving a blithe answer to that one.
I think, Ben, he's thinking that if it's their personal residence and they're selling it to somebody, maybe not as a second home, can they sell their shares? Can
Yes.
they sell the panels with it?
Short answer is yes.
Okay. That answer your question, John? I don't know where he is. John, was that good? You're muted. Okay. Okay, next question. I didn't realize the arrangement was attached to the property fix. If I move a GMP, can I take my shares with me?
Yes. Yes. As long as you're within the GMP, and the real limitation here is that the shares have to be allocated to a GMP meter. And so as long as you're moved to the GMP area, we've also set up in Shoreham, and I think we do the same thing here. If someone moves and they wound up and they're not in the GMP area, and the person buying their house doesn't choose to take the units in the array, we've said that we would make those available to other Series B participants in the project. And our belief is that as people move more and more to electric vehicles, to cold climate heat pumps, their needs for electricity will go up, so that the opportunity to sell the units to other of the 146, if that turns out to be the number, shareholders, it's probably a win-win both for the person selling and for the folks who want to increase the amount of electricity that they're offsetting.
Okay. Rich, I don't know how this relates, but if the Series B buyers, could they be somebody who rents in town? Could they still buy? Like if they don't own the house, but they're leasing the house for a year or 5 years, whatever, can they buy in?
I think the short answer is that they can, providing the Green Mountain Power meter is in their name.
Okay.
They would, of course, face, if they cease to rent, disposing of their units, perhaps to a future renter or taking them with them to another place where they had a GMP power. But that, we basically give the Green Mountain Power a list of all of the participants and the percentage of the monthly allocation that goes to them to 3 decimal places. It's quite a detailed list. So all we have to do is change the meter number associated with a particular set of units.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Ian.
Rich, is there an average number of panels that people in your 2 other arrays have purchased?
I don't have the average across in Shoreham was 12.75 units, but that includes a couple that were quite large. I haven't done the calculation if you exclude those. My guess is it's around 9 or 10.
Okay, and that's why you're sort of setting that limit. Because I know personally for my house here in town, so I have an all-electric house, and quotes I've received previously from other companies to do solar, and I'd have to build some sort of infrastructure to put it on. I would need like 20 or 25 panels, which it sounds like in this model I might not be able to get, even though I still want to support the project. I just wouldn't be able to cover all of my electrical needs because my house is all electric.
There are 2 limits, at least initially. One is that the state of Vermont limits the investment for people who don't qualify as either accredited to $10,000. And so depending on the panel price, that turns out, in Shoreham, it turned out to be 17 panels. Got you to the $10,000 limit. We'll know soon enough what the corresponding number will be here. But yeah, so there's the dollar limit, and then there's our limit of which was 10% in Shoreham, which was 61 units. So that didn't really stifle anyone if they could get and just without going into too much detail, the state of Vermont has a carve out for people that are called certified investors, which isn't quite as heavy a burden as being an accredited investor. And certified investors, and frankly, I can't remember, but it has to do with income and assets, can invest up to $25,000. So in that case, in the case of Shoreham, that would have got you to something like 40 panels if someone declared, and it's something they declare themselves. We don't have to, attest to that, but they self-certify that they're, quote, a certified investor.
Okay. Sally, I'm not sure where you are, but I understand you have questions from Pete. So if you want to get on and ask.
Sure, I'm here.
There you are.
I've been here the whole time on the phone, except for the first 15 minutes. I could not get on. It was driving me nuts. So I dialed in and I listened to it. I was glad.
No, now you're fading in and out.
Okay, so Pete Domenico. Okay, so Pete Domenico asked some questions. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
First of all, he said he approves of the project because it's consistent with the draft energy plan that he thinks is very well documented, and it's a comprehensive plan. He asked about long-term stormwater runoff. It seems like that's been a little bit covered already. He asked about though this project doesn't address methane venting from the landfill, will a new compliance be done going forward? And if so, will that compliance maintenance be over 10,000? And if so, who will incur the additional costs? And
I'm not sure I know the answer to that one, Val. I mean, we do monitor the wells. I don't know that we have any requirement for the methane.
yeah,
We do annual testing of all the wells, and each year they come. The results are very favorable. So there's nothing being produced. It's all being monitored. I don't imagine that would be changed as a result of this project.
I guess that's about it.
Okay, great. Is there anybody else? Any other questions?
This isn't
Go ahead, Rich.
question. On the last slide, I put our email address, which is info@acornenergycoop.com. If people think of questions, feel free to send it. Our one part-time paid person, Mary Mester, gets those emails and either answers them directly or finds one of the folks on the board who can answer them. So we'll get back to you pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. I think that is it.
I had a quick thing to add.
Go ahead, Ian.
I emailed Jen, our treasurer, and I was curious, just I know that we budget a certain amount each year just for the monitoring. And so I asked her for the last 5 years, what has been spent on the landfill. And so it's interesting numbers. 2016, which I think is when it was closed, was 26,000. 2017, 8,000. 2018, 7,000. 2019, around 7,000 again. And we've spent so far about 7,000, 6,000, and we spent around 2,700 this year. So we definitely, that it's a property that is costing the town money just because of the monitoring and things that have to be repaired. The wells, we had to repair a fan in one of those, and that added a little bit more. We've overspent in a couple of years just because of it is an expense. So to have the support of a project like this, where it's going to be bringing in revenue to support the ongoing monitoring, I think it's a very positive thing.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody. This was actually great, a lot better than I thought it would go, because I wasn't sure how it was going to work with all the questions. So I commend everybody, and it was good information. If anybody has any questions, they can reach out to Rich. He gave you the email, or check with any one of us, and we'll try and get answers for you.
And I want to add too that this will be continued on the select board's agenda for Monday. And also the Energy Committee maintains a web page on the town's website, and they'll be continuing to add information on this project as it moves along.
Perfect.
Michelle, may I add?
Sure, go ahead, Joel.
I think when we do get face-to-face ever again, maybe for a select board meeting, maybe we ought to keep this technology going though, and because we've never had this many people at a select board meeting since I've been.
We might have to add it in conjunction with the in-person.
Right. It's nice to have everybody.
Okay, great to see everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody. Good night.
Good night, Michelle.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you.